our videos right.
There we are. We're
Freezing.
here now.
We're here. Oh, it's like magic, isn't it? Yeah, we're here today to talk to you about space, about energy clearing, about clearing the space that you live in, that you work in, clearing the space of your relationships. Yeah, anything to do with space is the intention of what we have to talk about today.
It's a big topic, isn't
It
it?
is actually
We
quite a big
obviously
topic.
have a couple of chats, maybe through the week about what we're thinking about and what we want to talk about. And this was one where I think we started like, oh yeah, we'll talk about space and that'll be nice. And then we started both thinking about it and having discussions, and the topic got bigger and bigger and
Yes, so now we've got to narrow it in. Okay, so I might kick off by just talking about vibrational space. When I was talking to my spirit healer team that I work with daily in my clinic when I do healing work on people, um, one of those members of my spirit healing team was talking about how alive space is and how the environment that we live in, the vibration of that environment that we live in, it really affects who and what we are and who and what we have the potential to be. And one thing that I notice, as a spiritual healer, I'm working on the internal space of a person all the time,
yeah.
helping make sure that that vibration that is inside of their body is a vibrational space that enables that person to be flourishing, basically, to be able to, have as healthy a biochemical life, as healthy emotional life, as healthy a psychological life as that person can achieve at this particular point in time, in line with whatever, growth and lessons that they are going through. And one thing that comes up a lot in healings is the space that people find themselves in and having to do cleaning and clearing and making changes to the person's space. For instance, I had a client the other day who is has small children, and she has one small children and a teenager. And those children are moving from their father's space. They live with their father part of the time and then with their mother part of the
Okay.
time. So
Yep.
they're switching space all the time where they live. And she was saying that when the kids end up at her house, they have this really dense kind of negative energy around
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
And then it takes them a little while to shed that energy and then actually move into the energy that my client actually cultivates in her space, and which is quite different
Yes.
to their
Yeah, of
fathers.
course. Yeah.
And we were talking about how important it is to support that transition.
Yes.
Yeah. And I ended up not having to, as part of the treatment. It was part of the treatment was to actually, clear the space around her children, clear the space of the mother's home to be able to enable that transition to really facilitate.
It's
Mm,
interesting to me. I haven't heard that story
mm,
before, but we've had a few
mm,
stories like this in our
mm,
conversation. And what I reflected on before we came together, when I was sitting at home thinking, well, what does space mean to me? And I was thinking of what an enormous waste it is when people don't take authorship and
mm,
interface with their environments.
mm,
And then I came to speaking with you, and I found you were sharing all these stories and ideas that spoke about space as if it was alive,
mm,
that it was a living being almost,
mm,
that we, are constantly therefore being affected by. And
mm,
what I was reflecting on is that it's such a waste and a loss when people don't take the time to be present to the space they're in, and
mm,
to take some authorship of it, to, as you were
mm,
saying, cultivate. Your client
mm.
was cultivating the kind of space she wanted to be living in.
Yes, exactly. And one of the things is that the space that is around us affects our
Mm,
internal environment.
yes.
but then who and what we are being affects the space around us. So it's a bit of a chicken and an egg situation.
This way and that way.
Yeah, we are affecting the space, and the space is affecting us. And sometimes it's the space that we find ourselves in that needs to be shifted and changed in order for our internal space to change. And so that's basically what I'm saying here. And I ended up, I've developed a product for that actually. It's a spray. It's made with pure rose water, and it has the light of spirit infused into that rose water. And that light of spirit, you just spray this in the room, which I'm doing now, putting all over the camera.
Can you see us through that?
Yeah, exactly, through that haze.
Oh, it does smell lovely though, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. It's a beautiful rose smell. And that light in that spray actually comes into the space, and it rearranges the space so that this, depending on the function of what the space is,
yeah,
that whatever needs to take place in that space can be facilitated to take space. So what I mean by that is, an example, Tristan, is like, for instance,
diagrams prepared for you.
I have a diagram. Relationships. So for instance, with a relationship, there's a shared space, okay, in the relationship. So you've got one individual here, you've got another individual here, and this circle around that individual is their own energy, okay, their own boundary of self, if you like, and everything inside of there is their space, and it has a certain vibration. So there's a shared space in a relationship, just like in our home.
Yes.
There is a shared space. In our professional world, there is a shared space. And the beauty of actually inviting spirit in to help co-author the space that you find yourself in is that spirit is about, spirit has no agenda. That's the first thing. I'll just put my diagram down for a second. So spirit has no agenda. Spirit is able to create a space that is for the betterment of everybody that is in that space, everybody that is being affected by that space. Spirit has the ability to be able to create the space that benefits all. And so if I am a participant in this relationship, I might feel that this shared space is a little bit off. Okay.
Yeah.
And I might decide that I need to help bring some change into this space. But I am one part of this relationship, and I have an agenda.
You can't help it, can you?
No, you can't. We as human beings, we have an agenda. We have an agenda to survive. We have an agenda to sort of, like see things.
Influenced by our feelings and our emotions and ambitions and fears, all of,
That's right. And so I might have a perspective that says the space needs to be this particular way. But that doesn't mean that I'm right.
Yes.
Okay.
Sure.
And this person might have quite a different perspective of what this space needs to be.
Yes.
When you invite spirit in, it has a wisdom and it has a knowing. It knows what is best for this shared space.
Yes.
To help with whatever that relationship needs to be for those two people.
Yeah.
Yeah. And to help enhance that connection, change that connection, reintegrate that connection, whatever needs to take place for the betterment of that space. And and that's why I created this, because you literally just have to spray it to bring spirit in
to the space.
To the space, whether it be the relationship space, whether it be the home space, or whether it be the professional space. Yeah.
So I was thinking, and I talked to you a little bit about this, but just because you were talking about the relationship space, I was telling you a tiny bit during the week about a partner I had a very long time ago. And this person's still in my life a little bit, and I feel like it's important before I say anything else to say this is someone I love and respect very much. But at the time when we were together, they had some pretty serious addiction problems. We were living together.
Yep.
And they had some very, very strong addiction problems that were really, I think, dictating most of our relationship space, their individual space, and our entire home space, because we lived together.
Yep.
And I recall very strongly the feelings of chaos
Yeah.
and decay.
Yep.
Decay, so much decay in that relationship at that time in that relationship and in that home environment. And it wasn't very long after well, we separated because eventually these things become untenable. It
Yep.
wasn't long after that I met you.
Yeah.
And it wasn't long after that I became a client of yours. And I just wanted to reiterate that from obviously you're speaking about it from a practitioner perspective there, and I just thought I would contribute as someone who has experienced the change from you and your team coming in and clearing my home living environment and clearing my relation many times. Actually, this is just going back to a first time, but really throughout the many years that I've been a client of yours, experiencing that transformational nature of spirit.
Yep.
It's very tangible. It transforms what feels rigid or chaotic or any of those difficult places that limit your freedom.
Yes.
It just gives you back some leverage to occupy space for yourself.
Yes.
And I, at times, particularly when you speak about something like heavy addiction that I was pulled into and have experienced addiction myself, didn't have the facility at that time in my life to create the change that was needed.
Yes, because sometimes when there's chaos and density that is coming into a space, then that space, that chaos and that density in that space, it really starts to overcome us, and it really starts to drag us into a reflection of it. So our internal environment starts to become chaotic. Our internal environment starts to become, relatively dysfunctional too. And then once you've been strongly influenced by your space, what's in the space in that way, then it can be very difficult to detangle from that and change your vibration,
Especially with your home space, I imagine, because that's home base.
Your home space, I cannot say to you enough, is one of the most important spaces. I mean, of course, your own personal internal space, I would say, is the number one priority. Because that is the only space that you completely have authorship over yourself, and all the other spaces that you're in, relationship spaces, your home space, your professional space, you co-author them with other people. So you can't entirely control that space, right? So your home space, therefore, your own internal space, number one. Your home space, number two, really important, because your home space is where you come back to rest, replenish, and restore. And if your home space is chaotic, if your home space is overly fragmented, if your home space is has people in it, including yourself, that are bringing lots of heavy loaded energies into that space,
which
isn't
necessarily,
which happens to us,
exactly.
happens to us all.
It's not about being a bad person.
No, not at all. It's not about getting anything right or
No.
wrong. It's just what is truthfully happening
The world
to
being
you.
the dynamic, complex place that it is, I guess.
And so if that is going on, then your home space stops being a place in which you can plug in and regenerate. And then that starts to really take a toll on you. And so I drew another little lovely picture here. So here's your home, and here's one individual, another individual, another individual. And together, this is the shared space that overlaps. And each of these individuals are off, doing their own thing, possibly, during the day or whatever it might be. And then they're coming back into the home, and this is the energy of the home. And then all of this needs to synergize together. And it needs to synergize together in a way that works for each of the individuals in that space. And spirit has this incredible vibration of harmony.
Yes.
it's not only gender free, it has inherent in it a sense of a vibration, a very strong vibration of benevolence, a very strong vibration of positivity and lightness, and it has a vibration of harmony and peace within it.
Yeah.
And so it creates a space that enables each of those individuals in that home to be flourishing in their own individual ways, but flourishing in a way that contributes to the collective
yeah.
space.
It's interesting that something like this,
Mm.
it has almost well, I guess it does have an intelligence, because you're saying spirit does have the intelligence to understand context and purpose of space.
Exactly.
Which, sorry, I want to say is particularly interesting, I think, if you consider what's happened to us this year, where Trina works from home anyway, but for
whole other thing to talk about.
For most of us, well, not for many of us, certainly for me as a yoga and dance teacher, I did a little bit of work from home. I have a studio, but nowhere near the amount I have this year. And now my home space is also a professional space for me and for my husband. And the purpose of that space is changing constantly.
Yes.
Kind of like where at the start of this talk you mentioned the children who are moving from house to house. There's these transitional spaces as well.
Because their mum and their dad are very different people.
Yes.
And so their mum and their dad create very different spaces.
And in the same way, my work persona and my home persona don't necessarily always need and require and even give out the same energies. So I was thinking about that. Something that I found is, for my work experience at home, I can be in bed and wake up and get my laptop out and shift my internal space in a way where I'm able to get to work.
Yep.
And I was talking about that with my husband the other day, and he said, I don't know how you can do that. He needs to get out, go into a different room of the house, externally create a different space for that change to occur.
Yep. Yes. Exactly. And I'm like you. I can pretty much switch it like that, from professional to personal. I don't necessarily have to change space to be able to do that.
Yeah.
But I do find that choosing to change my physical space can support.
It can give you it can. It's definitely true.
Exactly. Which makes me think about moving on to another really. So we've sort of talked about what space is and why space is important.
Yes.
And different spaces have different functions.
Yes.
So your relationship space is a slightly different function to, we're talking about your home space. Your professional space has a different function, and you're often different parts of yourself are showing up in different spaces.
Yeah, absolutely they are. Definitely, yeah.
And so we talked about that and the fact that the vibration of the space is really important.
Yes.
Okay, so the vibration of your space actually helps nurture what can take place in that space and what is taking place in that space.
Yep.
But the other thing, one point I wanted to make about that before we move on, is that inside of you have who you are actually being at any moment in time. And then there is the potential of who and what you can be. Okay? And all of us are constantly sort of operating on the edge of who and what we actually are and who and what we have the potential to be. All right?
Yes.
And
sure.
so most of us have, well, not most of us, many of us have an intention to, be as healthy as we can be, as happy as we can be, as, productive as we can be, as kind and loving as we can be to ourselves and to others.
Yep.
I mean, most of us have fairly beautiful, aspirations in that way. And then sometimes what is coming to us from the outside world means that we don't always achieve what we are actually aspiring to be.
And yes.
And so what I intend to be, what I aspire to be, and then what I'm actually being are often slightly different. and we're constantly riding that edge. So by keeping your space nice and clean and nice and clear,
Yep.
then you open up the opportunity for you to be um,
As much of that, embodying as
as
much of that as you
embodying as
can.
much of your potential as you
Yep.
actually can be, rather than having the space around you defining who and what you are and what you can be. But there was another point that I wanted to make, and that is, how do you tell?
This is interesting.
Tristan, how do you tell
Mm.
when you need to clean and clear your space? Okay, I called this little talk that we're doing today, energy clearing, out with the old, in with the new.
Yep.
Okay, so that we're constantly cleaning out that of which we don't need anymore and creating space for us to keep stepping into, newness and our
Yep.
potential and what we can be. Um, and so, how do you know when your space isn't right for you?
It's such a tough question in
Yeah.
some ways. I'm just reflecting because
Mm,
we've talked about this
mm,
quite a few times, and I don't know if I've said this to you before, but sometimes I feel like in retrospect I can tell very
mm,
easily.
mm.
Sometimes in the, not always, but there are sometimes in the moment where I can't, it's like, yeah,
Mm.
when you look back, it's that, hindsight is 2020
Yes.
expression.
Yeah.
There are times where I've afterwards been like, oh, thank God
Mm,
that's, if I go back home after some darkness has been lifted from
mm,
our house,
mm,
it's like, this
mm,
is how it's meant to feel.
mm.
But I sometimes don't have that solid point of reference in the moment. So I'd love to know what you're about to say.
Well, I mean, what I'm about to say is basically that we can feel when the space needs a clean.
Yes.
Yeah,
And I do agree.
is really what it comes down to. And we might not notice that feeling until somebody has, confirmed it for us or pointed it out to us. But most of the time, the sensations that are taking place in your body will tell you
Yes.
that the space needs to be cleaned, cleared, shifted, it needs to be lightened.
So, what
Um,
kind of sensations are we talking about? Feelings of
mm,
blah, discomfort,
mm,
lethargy,
yep,
um,
heaviness.
heaviness.
It can be a smell. There's a smell that often
Yep.
like comes into a space that needs to be cleaned and cleared, and it's a musty smell. And I'm not just talking about the possibility of mold in your house. I
Yep.
just mean that certain densities of energy have a smell about them that isn't very nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, you might just notice how it's difficult for you to be lighter versions of yourself.
Yes, that's a big part for me. I think that's one I
Mm,
often notice at the time and also in retrospect strongly is the heaviness in which I'm living my life at that time. It's very hard not to be self-critical to an extreme degree
yes.
or short-tempered in moments where
Mm,
really it's uncalled for.
that's right. You might start arguing with your loved ones
Yeah.
more. You're irritable. Um,
Or even like joking with loved ones can become, how jokes can cross over into a confusing.
mm,
Things get murkier quicker, don't
they
they?
do. That's exactly right. Things get murkier much quicker. Yeah.
So one thing I think, as we're talking about this, is something. Not that this was necessarily about just plugging this, but
Mm,
it's sitting right in front of me
mm,
because I can't always embody that knowledge in the moment.
mm,
This, or I know you also have your spirit drops,
mm.
can be that nudge to help you feel it. Is that correct? Like, something like this is going to help you
Yeah.
develop some
So
clarity.
so something like a spray to help clean your house, clean the space,
Yeah,
and I actually call it a space, a spray of peace, protection, and prosperity.
beautiful.
So it creates a peace and a harmony in the space. It creates it helps protect the place, i.e., it helps protect the place, the space, sorry, not the place, the space from any undue influences that you don't really want in there. And it helps create and foster an environment of prosperity. So, I just got to remember what my actual point was that I was going to make. What were you saying?
So I was
before?
saying that this is something to help bring that nudge, that clarity.
That's right. So you can either be really proactive about your space,
yeah,
and say, you know what? Many people that live in this home are undergoing a little bit of challenge at the moment.
yeah,
And so, therefore, I know that I need to be concentrating more on nurturing the space.
yes,
So, you are using that space, that the spray, for instance, to just be every day,
yeah,
just to be keeping the space nice and clear.
yeah,
Or it might be a different situation where you've noticed that the density in the space starts to drop. Okay, so that is one really key
yeah,
indicator to you. So spirit feels, well, healthy energy feels really light.
yes,
It has a lightness about
yeah, and
it.
a vibrancy.
It has a vibrancy about it. It has a lightheartedness about
Yeah,
it. And when that, you were saying it yourself with that partner that you were living with that was having some challenging addiction
enormous
problems at the
challenge.
time
Yeah,
and was bringing a lot of energy, dysfunctional energy into the space, it starts to feel like you can't breathe very well.
yes,
It starts to literally feel dense, and you will feel that density. You will sensate it in your body in some way.
yeah,
And so it's a matter of going, right, I need to now be proactive about this
yes,
and do something to clear the space. Now, it's not a matter of getting it right or wrong. It's not a matter of being able to be exacting about whether you're feeling on the fact that the space needs to be cleaned is right or wrong.
yeah,
Because keeping your space healthy and contributing to the space being as positive and peaceful and prosperous as it can be is always going to be a good thing to do,
yeah.
is
Yes.
really what it comes
And I
down
think
to.
also as someone who is, for me, I'm working on learning to tune into spirit and to my body more. And that fear of getting it wrong does get in the way for me sometimes. Even though in other moments I'm very aware that those moments where you're getting it wrong, if it is with correct effort that you keep returning, eventually that's the fine tuning process. So
Yes.
you got to start somewhere.
That's
You
right.
know.
And then what will happen is that you change the space. Okay. And I'm not just offering this as a tool for you to change space. I've got lots of free resources on my website that help you to clean and clear your space, right? Both internally, your own space inside of you for your own health and well-being, and externally, the space that you live in, the space that you work in, the spaces that you're going into,
Yeah.
frequently. So I have lots of resources on my website, which I'll get to in a moment. But the point, oh gosh, I lost my point again. It's been a very long day at work.
It has been.
Oh gosh, what was I going to say? It was going to be really good. You know how that is always the way that it works. Yeah, there are lots of different ways to clean your space, but that's what I was going to say. So the sensations of your body can give you an understanding and an idea of when you need to clean the space. And then once you've cleaned the space, then allow the sensation to feel how the space feels different. And you'll notice it. You'll notice the way it makes you feel. You'll notice the way that it enables your thoughts to change. You'll notice the way it enables your emotions to even out. You'll notice the way that the space starts to feel like it's nurturing you and it's holding you. And whereas before it felt like a space that was going into battle with you, you
Yeah.
will
Yeah.
feel the difference.
Yes.
And so,
And trust your feelings, I think,
exactly,
is an important thing to say there.
it is.
Trust your feelings.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And you don't always have to understand your feelings.
No, in this way, because
Exactly.
that's where I get
We
trapped.
don't have to understand your feelings
Yes.
intellectually. So, we have a whole um, so much space inside of ourselves in order to feel our experience of the world. And I often use this example with clients where they might walk into a cafe or something and they just get this feeling. It doesn't feel good in here. It doesn't have to be a cafe. It can be anything.
I had that, I wouldn't say where, but I had a yoga studio where I loved the teacher, but I just did not like going to that space.
Yeah.
And it was just, I never really tried to solve that. I just decided I won't go to that space. That yoga teacher teaches somewhere else.
Yeah.
Oh, and that was just a feeling, and that was where I left that.
That is an absolute perfect example.
Yeah.
So sometimes you might go, oh, that space doesn't feel right for me, but you force yourself to be in that space anyway.
Because you can rationalize it, can't
exactly,
you? Oh, I shouldn't feel that way.
I shouldn't feel that way. I'm probably just making that up. I'm not being very nice to this cafe by feeling that way. But your feelings are your feelings, and they're not, your feelings are right for you. There might not be, another person might be able to walk into that space and they have a completely
not encounter,
different relationship.
Interface very differently.
Exactly, with that space. So, yeah.
I wanted to say something on that, or adjacent to that. As a yoga teacher, a lot of the work I do, and I'm now doing some of it again, thankfully, is going to high schools and teaching high school students yoga, which is an interesting space because I walk in not knowing anyone, and most yoga that you will teach is a group of people who have chosen to come along, but it's not the case at high school. This is like a PE class that's turned into a yoga class, or there's a few ways I might end up there, but that means you might encounter more resistance. And I remember being a teenager, and I probably would have been an awful yoga student as a teenager. I had a lot of insecurity. I would have been one of the ones doing anything I could to not engage with yoga because of my insecurities.
Yes.
And one of the things I've taken to doing when I encounter that kind of resistance is talking about shared space.
Yes.
And that as a class, we're not going to, but we could sit here and talk about who's the joker in the group, and who in this group is your close people, and who are the people you're not as close with. And then I lead to a really interesting one, is who here helps your learning and discovery, or who here gets in the way of it.
Yes.
And that can change.
Yep.
But what I'm trying from day to day or whatever, but what I try to highlight to these students as actually a part of yoga, really, it's part of learning about yoga, which is more than just asana and poses, is that we actually become, back to, the word at the top here is home, but that could be school, that could be society, that could be Australia, Melbourne. We become part of each other's environments.
Yes.
And I highlight that, and I'm particularly interested just in the example I'm giving of classes, who stops you from learning. When I go on to say, as you said earlier, most humans, we have benevolent ambitions.
Yes.
We have aspirations that are good.
Yes.
And I say very few people sit there thinking, I hope that I'm stopping someone else from learning today.
Absolutely not. We are kind in our essence. Humans are absolutely kind in their essence.
And I just like that idea of space as well, that we talk about it as something we are experiencing, and we are, but it's also something we are creating, not just for ourselves, but you did say this, but for everyone. And we briefly spoke about it, and we won't today, but the space we enter when we get on the internet, the way we collectively create Twitter.
Yeah.
The energy's on there.
So, I love Twitter, but oh my goodness, it's a space where you can be nasty. People are nasty to each other in that space quite frequently.
It's fascinating, isn't it? The way different spaces.
What cultivates that space?
And that's something that and this is a whole. I'm really pulling us far away from where we started.
Well, it's quite mechanically cultivated, that space, I think.
Yes.
And is it cultivated with much heart, or is it cultivated? Anyway, we really could get on.
We could pull ourselves a long way into that. Yeah,
we could. But basically, just to consolidate things a bit, is that when you invite spirit into your space, spirit can help create the space that benefits the majority as well as the individuals in a really balanced and harmonized way. In a way, because spirit has a perspective that I call a bigger picture perspective. I know that people in my field, spiritual healers. We overuse that word, I've been told, bigger picture. But it does. It's from a perspective that we get to see through our own lens of our own experience as one individual human in the world.
Yes.
And we get to listen to many other people's experience as well.
Mm.
But spirit has this wisdom and this knowing inside of it, that inherent in its light, that knows how to benevolently impact everyone.
Yeah.
And so when you invite spirit into the space, you invite in this light, this life force, this energy that is able to transform the space, change the very nature of the space, and change it into a nature that is going to benefit those of which actually cohabit the space.
That's lovely.
Yeah.
And so you mentioned briefly, but I want to circle back to this. You
Mm-hmm.
do, I mean, this is a product that people can get this from you?
Yes,
Yep.
yes.
So this is something that we can get, but you do have, and I use a lot of these myself, a
Mm.
lot of free resources on your website for clearing your personal space and for clearing our shared spaces.
Mm.
I want to quickly highlight, but I'm sure you will,
Mm.
direct people where they need to go. But I love and practice nearly every single day
Mm.
your burning, clearing, and protection method.
It's a good one.
Oh, this one,
I use it all the time
I've been using this for years, and just more and more and more as I've developed the practice.
Mm.
So there's a video
Yes,
that we filmed.
I'll put the link to the video in the comments here of this video. And it's a video that gives you really clear instructions on how to use a particular method to clear space. It's called the burning method.
Yep.
And it basically hands over to the wisest part of yourself and to spirit too, to clean and clear and transform the space in a way that benefits the function of that space. Yeah. So you can do clearing and protections on your own health. You can do a clearing and protection on your dog if your dog's as anxious as mine is and needs a bit of support. You can do clearing and protection on a relationship. There's lots of different ways.
I've found that enormously has
And
helped me.
there is also meditations on my website which help with clearing and protection as well. The two that I recommend is one called Clearing and Protection Meditation. Another is a meditation by a healing spirit called David, Star of David, who is amazing at clearing the physical space and really transforming it and lifting away density and bringing lightness and peace in instead. Yeah. Of course, people are familiar with saging your space.
Yes.
That's another thing that is commonly done.
Yep.
And I think that this spray just slightly lifts the ante on that.
Yep.
It's just saging your space is amazing. This just calls in because I've been taught a particular method by my healer team that I've worked with for over 20 years now.
Spirit healer team. So these aren't other people or humans. These are
spirits. Yeah, and those spirits have taught me a way to actually put the light of spirit into this spray in a very strong and tangible way, so that you can clear things from your space in a way where you don't have to book a session with me or with somebody else to clear that space, because dense energies get stuck in places. One thing that I haven't mentioned is that there are imprints that are left in places sometimes. So you might be going away on a holiday and you're going to stay in a hotel. And you might be someone that's really sensitive to the space that you find yourself in. You know that about yourself. You know that your internal environment is easily shifted by the space you find yourself in. So you can take something like this with you and you can spray that hotel room to get rid of the energy of the people that were in it before, to get rid of the energy of the people that have been moving through that space. You might move into a new house and there's imprints of trauma, for instance, that are left in that house from the people that were living there before or from ages and ages and ages ago. You might want your wedding to go really, really well, and you might want to spray the
Yeah.
room. There's so many ways. You have a child that's sick, and suddenly your home space becomes a hospital space. Well, support that space to transition from
Yeah.
home to hospital.
With the
Um,
support of spirit.
with the support of spirit, they can
Yeah.
transform and transition the space into what it needs to be to nurture the participants that have in it. I've said it many times. I won't continue repeating myself. I'm sorry.
But it is.
But that's basically what it comes down to.
It's one of
So,
those messages that I think I still like hearing over and
yeah,
over because,
okay,
yeah,
there you
so
go.
keep saying it.
There you go. Yeah.
I,
So, if you've listened to this video and you've made it all the way here, well done. I'm going to offer you a special offer if you are interested in buying one of these for yourself or for someone for a gift for the Christmas period, as you
be
know.
an awesome, yeah, I
Yeah,
love
it's a
that
really
idea.
lovely gift actually.
Yeah.
Then I'm going to.
I need it for Christmas Day even.
Yes, exactly.
As I enter my family's house. No, they're lovely.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm going to offer you 25% off.
Amazing.
If you
Stunning.
buy one of
Yeah.
these today.
Gorgeous.
Yep.
And also, if you watched this and have thought of any questions, we would so love to, or any just comments, your own experiences. We love it when people often come to us and say, "Oh, I listened to what you were talking about, and I thought this, or I was wondering that." Let us know because we love talking about this stuff and thinking about it. So
Yes. We tried to make this discussion at 6 o'clock tonight because we were hoping a few more people might be able to come on and do a bit of a Q&A with us. But yeah, we'll try and get the timing right and work
we'll
that
find
out.
a Q&A time.
Yeah.
So
All right, so we'll leave it at that for today.
yeah.
Thanks so much for listening to us and enjoy the rest of your day or evening.
See you, everyone.
Bye.